What is leadership development? Well, the answer is actually very simple. Leadership development is helping someone or teaching someone to become a better leader. It's about the process of providing someone with the tools and the resources to raise the level of their own leadership. And this applies to all levels of leadership in an organization, from the frontline leaders all the way up to the CEO. Now, that's the quick and easy answer. But when we take a closer look at it, it gets a little bit more complicated. That's because leadership development consists of three main elements, and they are content, process, and suppliers or providers. What is the content of leadership development? What do you actually get taught? And then what is the process of leadership development? How do you actually get taught? What actually happens? And then who are the providers of leadership development? In other words, where do you go to get leadership development? So those are the three key ideas of leadership development. And I'm going to, in this video, what I want to do is address the first one, which is the content. I address these two, process and the providers, in separate videos. So let's take a closer look at the content. Now, there are over 70,000 books with the word leader or leadership in the title. And that doesn't include all the books on leadership that don't even have those words in the title. All these books break down into well over 60 fields or disciplines of leadership. Now, look at this list. This list represents different fields of leadership, or to put it differently, these represent the different lenses people use to address leadership development. Now, to capture the full extent of this list, I would need to have at least 2 more slides exactly like this. So when we answer the question, what is leadership development, we have to say it depends. It depends on the lens through which the person or the organization delivering the leadership development is actually looking at it, how they're looking at leadership development. And there are lots of different lenses. Now, I'd like to highlight a few of them from this list. Now, some people or some organizations focus on the importance of self-awareness. And typically they use assessment instruments to help them provide that self-awareness, and there are some really good instruments out there. Some focus on systems thinking, which is looking at the systems and the processes of execution, particularly from a systems-wide or an organization-wide perspective. Now, many providers of leadership development, they focus on what's called performance management. It's really about people performance, but the term that people use is performance management. Now, that includes a lot of different fields. Motivation and employee engagement, for example. That's a huge one. Situational leadership is another one, which is about addressing individual performance in terms of their level of experience and expertise. Then there's also coaching, which is another huge area of leadership development. And it's often tied to some of these different areas here that are part of leadership development. Now, then we also have empowerment and delegation. That also gets a lot of attention. And then we get emotional intelligence. That also is a huge one. And that's not just about self-awareness. It's also about awareness, social awareness, being aware of other people, being tuned in to other people. And then there are a number of others that deal with a larger, more macro level, and they tend to be targeted more at senior levels of leadership. So, for example, organizational design and structure, or it could be strategy and vision, or it could be corporate culture, or it could be corporate life cycles. Now, this list doesn't, the ones I've just addressed don't include all the other ones on this list, but they all come under the general heading of leadership development. And what you can see is that leadership development is broken down into a bunch of very specialized fields. And to understand what leadership development is, we have to recognize that people come to leadership development from a lot of different perspectives. In other words, a lot of different lenses that they're looking at it. Now, here are a couple of helpful, helpful observations. There is tremendous richness in this list. There are contributors who brought tremendous value to the field of leadership. At the same time, it's often confusing. And that's the real issue of leadership development. How do you know which approach is right for you? Which one addresses the challenges, the leadership challenges that you're facing? And very often we get that wrong. For example, when someone isn't performing well, it's easy to assume that the solution has to do with some aspect of motivation or employee engagement. What they need is we need to figure out how to motivate them more. But very often, that's not the issue. It's often a systems problem that's making the person perform poorly. So we end up applying an otherwise good solution to a problem it isn't even designed to solve. Or we try to solve an execution problem when in actual fact it's an alignment problem. We focus on the symptom and not on the cause. Now, all this may sound like a lot of really bad news, but actually there's some really good news. And the good news is that there is a solution to all this confusion. And I address that in separate videos. Now, the two more elements of leadership development, understanding what it is that we need to unpack, and I mentioned them in the beginning. What is the process of leadership development? How's it taught? And who are the suppliers of leadership development? Where do you go to for leadership development? We have two videos that answer these questions. And so please join me for those two. And also, please leave any comments or questions you have about leadership development. I'd love to hear from you. All the best in your pursuit of great leadership.